It's strange how these houses have changed. They were originally built for family occupation, and then they were let out in the 30s as rooms, and then they reverted to owner occupation. My gran had a room. It was the first floor back, and I used to visit her here, and she was always telling me marvellous stories about her cronies and her neighbours. She told me once that Mrs. Alf banged on the wall because she's bedridden, asked me to go in and help her, and I went in. She was laying there, terrible smell there was, and she said, would you help me, Mrs. Williams? I've done me business laying here. Would you get me a pair of bloomers from the drapers? There's some money on the mantelshelf. All she had on the mantelshelf was 1.11, but I put the rest to it. And I come back with these nice interlock bloomers, and she's still laying there, this terrible smell. And I said, you want to get out of the bed, I said, and wash yourself, I said, Mrs. Alf, you dirty cow. And she gets up very grand. She said, oh, it's all right. She said, don't worry. Sit down, and I'll play the piano to you. And she played Moonlight and Roses. There's no moonlight, of course, and smell. Oh, nothing like roses, I can tell you. My gran only knew one song. My gran used to sing, she pulled away all the dashing spray over the waters blue. Help, help, she could hear the cry of the shipwrecked crew. But Grace had an English heart, and the raging storm she braved. She pulled away all the dashing spray, and the crew she saved. We saw that Grace Darling. Grace Darling, lovely song, Silioka. Go on, lovely. I had another gin and port. Gin and port, she said. Not port and lemon, she had gin in the port. And whatever was left, she'd take it, you know. But cheers! She'd take everybody else's drink.
When my gran died, the funeral cortege slowed in respect as it passed her house, but it came to a halt outside the pub where she'd been such a good customer. The landlord came out with his tribute, The Gates of Heaven Ajar. That infuriated my Aunt Alice, who'd already bought an identical wreath. Only the family should give the Gates of Heaven ajar, she kept saying. The whole day was a riot of confusion. One of the mourners actually managed to drop her handbag in the grave.
Now, this was once a very elegant hairdresser shop, and my father went from being an assistant here to actually running it. So after Cromer Street, we came and lived over the premises, and I went up in the world. Of course, yours is one of the few shops remaining, you know, barber shops remaining, that is like the shop my father had in Marchmont Street, Peter.
Oh, yes.
You know, nowadays they've all got so shishy, haven't they? Have you noticed all these pink lights and posh mirrors and everything all over the place? It's ridiculous. I mean, this is the sort of thing you want, isn't it? Where you come and have a straightforward haircut.
That's right.
My father had no time for anything fancy, you know. I mean, a man I remember once came into the shop. Oh, I'd like a blow wave. And he said, blow? You'll get no blow waves from me. I'm not doing no blow waves. Why are you? Blooming iron. Iron off. Iron. I'm not having no irons in my shop. Get out. Have a straightforward haircut or nothing. And women, you know, he was tactless. I mean, I was always staggered that he made any success at all as a barber, because I remember a woman say, I'd like a henna dye. And he said, henna? On your face, a henna? You look like a tart. You want to look like a tart? Oh, no, I don't. Well, then don't have it. He laid the law down all the time. My mother used to take the cash in the gents, you know. She said, sometimes I'm the shampoo girl, but most of the time she would take money in the gents. Yes. And one of the customers, he said to me, I was there, he said, you know, she's got that little television so that we could watch the racing. So I said to her, you know, that's too small. You want to get the new Echo model. Lovely, is 17-inch console. He said, and your mother turned around, she said, oh, 17 inches, you console anyone. He said, we all laughed. He said, don't expect to hear that. He said, do you, from a venerable, grey-haired old lady? I said, no. But this is, she's not typical, my mother. Because he used to specialise, my old man, in Marcel waving. Do you remember that, Peter?
Yes, the iron waving, yes. Oh, dear.
Sad to see the empty basin over which my father actually deloused some of the heads with paraffin.
Yes, it was all a bit grotty now, but in the old days, that was a very elegant window. And he always had a nice face block with a wig on it, and very beautifully Marcel waved. very elegant. That was the grating. We used to get the coal in down there, and one night during the war, my father was down there getting the coal in, when two servicemen above relieved themselves through the grating, and he rushed into my mother and he said, "Here, I've been peed on. When I was getting the coal, I was peed on. I bet it was serving. I bet it was Americans. I put my shirt on it." She said, "Well, if you're peed on, Sally, you better take your shirt off. I'll wash it for you." She was quite incorrigible.
And when I grew too old for shorts, I was dispatched to school in Camden, taking me further afield than the streets of my earlier years, and on a voyage of discovery not only of other places, but other experiences of art, literature, and music.
About the age of 11, I suppose it must have been, I came to this school, the Lyle Stanley Central School. I seem to remember I spent most of the time rather aimlessly staring out the window. But the one thing I did enjoy were the German lessons. It was odd that we were given German as a second language, but that was one we were taught. And I remember also we were made to sing German songs. And a whole group of us were sent as part of a great London choir to County Hall, where we sang the Beethoven, Die Himmel rühmen, die ewige Ehre, and another song called the Lorelei. We were all dressed up in lederhosen, and we all had to make our own costumes, little shorts and braces and funny hats with a feather in them. And we had to stand there. Of course, I enjoyed it. It was all part of performing. I think it was that period that sowed the seeds of a lasting love for the German Romantic movement, both in music and literature. Hey, Fred, that's a very...
I've got a bike. I've got a bike.
Have you got a bike?
Yeah.
That costs a lot of money. How much does that cost, do you know?
110.
110? And you got a bike? When I was young, we only had skates, and they were ordinary skates, not the plastic ones you see today. They were metal wheels with ball bearings.
Yeah, because...
And I used to go to school all up Osselton Street by holding on the back of horse-drawn carts, and then my roller skates took me along the street, you see, and we weren't really allowed to do it, and people used to say, "Don't hold on the back of carts, because if they all stop suddenly, and you go forward like that, you see, you bash all your mouth on the back of the cart, you see." But we never took any notice. We always used to go on the roller skates all the way to school.
When I left school, my father said, "You've got to have a trade, boy. The one thing they'll always want is maps. I mean, people have got to find their way round, haven't they?" So I became an apprentice litho draftsman at Edward Stanford Limited, map makers in Longacre. And every morning I cycled proudly to work through the streets of Bloomsbury, past the statue of Francis, Duke of Bedford, and those incredible houses in the area that housed so many famous artists, people like Virginia Woolf, Maynard Keynes, Lytton Strachey, Edward Knobloch. In fact, people almost as eccentric as myself. It was in this street, Montague Street, that my old chum, Johnny Vere, lived. And it was him, Johnny, to whom I owe the concept of indignance in comedy. He always played it with tremendous hauteur. He was the bishop in Hancock's Half Hour, and when he married Tony to Hattie Jakes, he stood at the altar, and he always closed his eyes in the middle of his speech and said, "Those whom God hath joined together, let no man put asunder." And then when he opened his eyes, they'd both left the church. They'd gone. And he looked right into camera, and he said, "Yes, charming."